morning. Hopefully my voice will carry that everywhere. I'll try and gain that way if I can. So my mission trip, if you want to call it that, was a little bit different than Nicole's. But in 2009, I graduated from the University of Western Ontario and decided to head out and do something different. So I had some friends who were heading to South Korea, and I decided that it might be a good place to go. Have some fun, get out of the country for a year. So I got accepted through a company called Canadian Connections out of Toronto, and within a month at the very most, was heading to South Korea with one of my best friends and his girlfriend and another friend of mine from Strathroy that I've known since elementary and high school. So we, October 18th, 2009, we boarded a flight out of Toronto and headed for South Korea. Didn't know what I was doing. Little worried. My two friends went over first, so they were there for a couple months, and luckily they had everything figured out for me when I got over. So my transition was pretty easy. However, when I got over there, I still remember the first day. We got off the plane, and we had to wait about 12 hours at the airport. So when the people finally came to get us, we went to a hotel where we spent 4 days and had a little orientation. They told us what to expect, what we would see over the year, and just got us ready for the teaching. So I went to I won't say a little town, but not so little, a town of 3 million people just outside the capital of Seoul. So if you know anything about Korea, just for simpleness, Korea more or less looks like my hand, pretty small. So Seoul is kind of right about here. We've got North Korea on top, we won't really talk much about. Anyway, I was in a satellite city of Seoul called Incheon, which is more or less Mississauga to Toronto. So I was about 45, 50 kilometers away from Seoul, in a town of about, or a city of 3 million people, 3.5 million people. So to give you some idea of the size of Korea, South Korea is the same size as New Brunswick, land mass-wise. Does anyone know how many people, give or take, there are in Canada? Our population? Shout out number? 35. Yeah, about 34, 35. So, 34, 35 in Canada. In Korea, South Korea alone, there is 50 million people in the same size as New Brunswick. So, when I got over there, I was going to be a changed man, that is for sure. A guy who had no patience now has all the patience in the world. There isn't too much that will disrupt me anymore. So I get over there, we had our 4-day orientation, and at the end of the 4 days they came and took us to our little apartments. So my teacher came and picked me up, takes me to my apartment, shows me my school, drops me off and says, "Here you go. Welcome to Korea." So I get into my little apartment. There was about, apartment building was about 50 apartments in it, I guess. One room. I walk in, I have my bed at the back, the kitchen is right there, TV, bed, and then a washroom. So everything all within this small studio apartment. After living in university for 5 years, it wasn't really much different than a student ghetto, if you will. My first impressions, all I remember, that first day, teacher drops me off, "Here you go, unpack, have a nice day." So I decided, well, let's go out, see what we can find, and see what life is like. So the first thing I remember is walking out, and there's no English. Nothing is in English. So you have to pick. You want something to eat? You point. So I remember the first couple days were a bit nerve-wracking. No one spoke English. When I got there, I realized where my friends were in relationship to me. It's about 45 minutes door to door. So I was a bit upset at first. You know, how am I going to make friends? I'm not a very outgoing person. At first, I'm pretty shy, so I was pretty nervous. So, when I was over there, I was hired to teach elementary school, so I was teaching grade 3 to 6. The first thing they told us when we had our orientation is that you will be a rock star for the entire year. The kids will treat you like you're royalty, literally. So, the first day I walked into school, kids didn't even know me, but they came running up, and they just all over you, teacher, teacher, and that's about all they know at that point, is teacher, teacher. And they literally treated me like a rock star from the day I walked into that school to the day I left. And I brought some different things for you to look at after the service if you'd like, but I had all my students for grade 3 to 6 made up little bits for me at the end. Each student I had wrote a note for me, so I'll look at that if you'd like, but that was the best part of this. And for me, I didn't have to do any disciplining, so I looked like a fun guy. It was pretty awesome. So I'll talk a little bit about the school system, because the school system is very, very different than Canadian school system. So these kids are drilled, and I mean drilled, when it comes to school. They start around the same age, but they go to school 12 hours a day sometimes. Grade 3s will go to school in the morning until 2 o'clock, like us, then they go to a private school. They might go to a private school for English, math, science, history. And I had grade 3s that would be out till 11 o'clock at night in school, and then they come home, do their homework, and they'll be up till 2 o'clock in the morning and get up and do it again. The other thing is they go to school every other Saturday, and the teachers obviously have to be there to teach. But part of our contract was we didn't have to come in on those Saturdays. So I remember the first few weeks, teachers on Friday afternoon, "Oh, I'll see you tomorrow, Tyler." "No, I'm sorry. I'm taking off for the weekend." So school is very important. It all starts in grade 1 when those kids go into elementary school. How well you do in elementary school depends on where you go to middle school. And all the parents want their kids at the best middle school possible. How well you do in middle school depends what high school you go to. How well you do in high school depends what university. Same as us here, we all want to get into the best universities, but if kids don't get into the best high school or don't have great marks, they literally get beaten by their parents until they start up and have good grades. The one story I tell everybody is I remember a kid came back after the weekend and I knew it was his birthday. So I figured his name out. I said, "Johnny, how was your birthday on the weekend?" "Oh, teacher, it was okay." I said, "Well, what'd you get?" "Oh, I got forgiveness." "You got forgiveness for your birthday?" "Yeah, I got a B on my test last week." So these kids are absolutely drilled. The other thing is punishment. Here, if I even touch the kid, see you later. Over there, and they warned us about this in orientation. They said, you will see some things that might shock you, make you upset at first. So in the first couple of months, I saw some taps on the head, you get a slap on the back. Then it got to pulling the hair. I had a teacher who would pull their hair out, walk behind them and just pull their hair, or just flip. And this was their favorite ones. They would just flip as hard as they can, right on the forehead and on the temple. Then towards the end of my year, I saw something I never thought I'd ever see. It was towards midterm time, and midterms were just stressed because these kids were in grade 6 and they were going on to middle school next year. So they had to do well to get into the right middle school. And these boys, who compared to Canadian kids, are extremely well behaved. But these kids didn't do their homework and they were joking about in class. And unfortunately, because I didn't speak the language, a lot of times I didn't know what was going on. But these kids had done whatever, and at the end of class, the teacher took them to the back and started just kind of yelling at them, being stern with them. So the next class walked in and I started teaching, and all of a sudden I hear these screams, and I kind of turned around. Of course, I lost all my kids' attention. So I look at the back, and she's pulling her hair out, everyone right from the side of the head. I said, okay, that's not too bad. Well, that wasn't enough. All of a sudden, I hear this whack, and I completely lost all control of my class. And I look at the back, and she has taken, there's 3 boys, she's taken all their heads, and wham! I could hear the crack in front of the classroom. And she didn't bat an eye. Then after that, she wasn't done there. She took them out into the hallway, and our hallways were about 50 meters long. She made me take a chair, hold it above their head, get down into the crouch position, and walk 3 times around the hallway with a chair, just because they didn't do it wrong. So at lunchtime, I went up to her and I said, Ashley was my teacher's name, I said, I don't want to say anything about your technique, but if you were to do that in Canada, you would walk away with handcuffs. And she couldn't believe it. She couldn't understand why you couldn't touch a kid. So that definitely changed me for sure. And, some definitely way I'm not going to teach, and hopefully never see that again. In Korea, I guess what I'll start doing now is just teach you a little bit of the language. When I went over, I wanted to learn some of the language. Speaking French and whatnot, I do enjoy languages. So I picked up little bits here and there. But the most I picked up was when I was teaching, because you're teaching translation, so it's impossible not to, hear what's thank you in Korean, so they know. So I was constantly learning, and it made me a better teacher because I started picking up more and more of the language, so I could actually communicate with the kids in Korean by the end of the year, which made my teaching a heck of a lot easier, because I could do the teaching. I didn't need the Korean co-teacher. So a lot of the times we would co-teach, but then towards the end of the year, it became just mostly me, and she would help out with this when she needed to. So, and that was the thing, we weren't allowed to touch the kids. We weren't allowed to do any of that discipline, so anything like that, we just handled over. And like I said, I looked like the cool guy, because I always did the fun stuff, and she did the discipline, so everybody loved Tyler. So, in Korea, I'll teach you really quickly. Hello, okay? Repeat after me. Annyeong. Annyeong. Haseyo. Haseyo. Okay? So I've got it written up here for you. So there it is right there. There is kind of a translation between, or a relationship between English and Korean, but I won't go into that today. But anyway, that's it there. Annyeong, haseyo. So that just means hello, basically. Annyeong means hello, and haseyo is kind of how are you. So, the weird thing is that goodbye is annyeong haseyo. So it's more of a GK instead of an H. But to shorten it, they would always say annyeong. So, well, you go, you come. Now, that being said, the other thing in Korea is everything, the level of respect for your elders is huge, really huge. So, there's a lot of little things. Like, if I went up to someone, say Michelle, for example, a minister who I would have to respect, she's older than me, she's in a position, kind of authority. So I might not say annyeong haseyo, I would say something like annyeong shimida, which is just adding, you're changing the haseyo part of it when you're talking to someone who is older than you. So they have little ways, little things like that where depending on who you're talking to, you have to change what you're saying. Now, the next one, kamsahamnida. Kamsahamnida is thank you. So when I, go into a store in the morning, I go into school and annyeonghaseyo, and you always bow to whoever when you're saying So, in the school, I would always have my kids, if I'm handing out a piece of paper, they would always come up to me and, teacher, and hold out two hands. Sometimes they would, if they forgot, they would kind of do one hand, but there would be times I would go to joke with them and they were pulled away, and they would only have one hand out, and they thought I wasn't giving it to them because they didn't have two hands. So then as soon as I started pulling it away, they would go, sorry, teacher, and use two hands. So they know, and I just thought I was being funny. And they would get all serious and, sorry, teacher, sorry. Another thing is things like eating meals. Whenever we go out for a meal with our principals or the school, you never sit before the principal. Principal always sits first, so it doesn't matter if he's an hour late, you do not sit. You wait for him to come. And he always has a designated spot at the table, so he's usually in the middle. And then you'd have your vice principals on either side. And he always gives a speech at the beginning of every meal. So just little things like that. You never get up from the table before he's done, or before the head of the table is done. Just little things like that. I'll just tell some interesting facts. I remember saying to my buddy Neil on one day when we were walking through town, I saw a mentally disabled person. And I said to him, I've never seen, you don't see too many people with, whether it's mental disabilities, physical disabilities, you don't see them ever. And I said to him, is there just not that many in Korea? What's going on? And he said, no, they shun them out of society. So they're never going to amount to anything, they're never going to go to university, get those great jobs. So they hide them away almost, which is terrible. The other thing, they don't integrate into the classroom. So the same thing in the classroom, you have students who have disabilities, they sit in the corner and they just read a book. You don't teach to them because they're never going to learn it. And if they can't keep up, well, then tough luck, they keep going. So that was a bit, that took a bit of getting used to it first, for sure. The other great thing about this teaching job was they love their alcoholic Korea. They really do. And it gets drank at every meal. They have basically like a vodka that's called soju, and you drink shots of it. But they'll do it at any dinner table. It's always there. So you go for a meal at 3 o'clock in the afternoon after school, and you're sitting there with your principal doing shots. And the principal will walk out of there, walking 10 steps sideways, 1 step forward, and he doesn't know where he is, but it's acceptable. So there's little things again where if he comes up to you, the principal comes up to me and wants to do a shot with me, I always pour his first. So I pour it, and you always use 2 hands. So whenever you're pouring something, you're giving something, like I said, 2 hands, even if most people do it like this. So if you're pouring a bottle or a shot for him, you always use 2 hands. If this hand isn't doing anything, it's like a sign, and then there's not a disrespect. So you always pour his, he shoots it, and then he fills yours up, and you take one. But they will keep coming around. So it's pretty crazy. But that being said, everyone drinks like crazy over there. But you don't have trouble with the kids getting into drinking at a young age because they're so focused on school. And that's the other thing, there's no drinking laws. So you can walk down the street. It's like Vegas. You can walk down the street, you can hop in a cab with a beer, you could ride on the subway, do anything. And we kept saying while we were over there, oh, this would be great for Canada. They could do something like this. But we know our kids, and it would just never work. So, this didn't happen until about the end of the year, but we went up to the teacher's room, the grade 6 teacher's room, and every Thursday we would have a little meal, just wind down after the week. But we stored liquor and beer in the teacher's room. And the principal would come in, sit down, have a beer with you, go away. And it was great. But again, things like that, you just can't get away with. had. It's supposed to be the nicest beach in the world, so we decided to go check it out, and we just laid on the beach. And it was actually one of their biggest festival in the Philippines the week we were there, so we got to see some local events, which was cool. Then actually, this weekend a year ago, I spent in Japan. Went with 3 of my co-workers. Just headed over to Japan for the weekend. Hopped on a flight late Friday night at 2 a.m. Literally slept about 2 hours the entire weekend. We just traveled Tokyo for about 24 hours straight, and then hopped on a flight at 4 a.m. Monday morning. Rolled into school, which was supposed to start at 8:40. We rolled in at 8:45. Drove right from the airport, hopped in the car, and piled into school. And then my last trip came in August, where we went to China and spent our time in Beijing. Did the Great Wall of China. If you ever get a chance, it's great. I mean, it's one of the natural wonders of the world, but the Great Wall was one of the highlights of my trip. We went through this hostel that we were staying at, who actually owns part of the wall. So unless you're staying at the hostel, you can't go on this part of the wall. So it's all unrestored and a lot different than the rest of the wall. And we actually got to spend the night sleeping on the wall. They set up tents for you and everything, so we watched the sunrise and sunset come up over the Great Wall of China. So it was pretty cool. So I've brought some things with me. You're more than welcome to have a look at after the service. This here is just some notes and presents my students left me, some pictures of some of my students and my co-teachers. And if you're at all interested, I just brought it, but these are all my lesson plans that I made for the year, and all the summer camps that I did. And other than that, I think that's about it. I will just say, this here is the Seoul subway map. When I first hopped on, I went, holy, where am I going? And it is overwhelming at first, but it's pretty easy to get around, and it's extremely cheap. Korea is extremely cheap. You buy one of these T-Money cards, you just refill it at the convenience store. It was about 50 kilometers from Incheon, where I live, to Seoul, and I could get there and back for about $1.09, not even. I could travel all around Seoul for the day for about $3. It was pretty cheap. So anyway, I'm sorry I've taken a bit too long, but that is my trip to Korea. This year is my name in Korean. So, learning to speak or write Korean is one of the easiest things I can teach you all in about half an hour. It's really easy. So, quickly, everything's broken down into syllables. So each pair or grouping represents a syllable. So, ta, il, la. So everything is broken down. So if I were to write computer, I would write com-pu-ta. So that's ta, il, la. Thank you.